Welcome back to the HIH studio. My name is Ariel Stern, and I am the Director for International Healthcare Economics here at the Health Innovation Hub. For those of you who are joining us on the live stream, it's wonderful to have you back. What you haven't seen that's been happening behind the scenes over the last several hours is that 4 different groups of motivated scientists, researchers, and digital health entrepreneurs have been working together to come up with creative study designs for potential DIGA, for potential digital health applications. They've been working with members of the manufacturer companies who've been answering questions and helping them think through their motivation for why they want to conduct trials and what they'd like to show. So what we wanted to do during the live stream portion of this event is actually invite our research teams to report back to the live stream audience and share a bit about what they experienced. And something that I'm looking at, I can see many of the friendly faces here on Zoom. Something that we've chatted with the teams about is also just the importance of being honest about this. I think something that really all of us in the research community benefit from is openly discussing the challenges, because only then can we really work through them together and start to think creatively about solutions. So with that in mind, I'm going to give everyone a warning. In the following order, we will be hearing from first FIMO, then NeuroNation, then Mind District, and then iScan. And so what we're going to do is invite one member of each of those teams to take over the Zoom screen. Our teams have been working with Miro software, which is just digital whiteboarding software. What most of the teams will choose to do is actually do a screen share of their whiteboard. We'll have one member of the team talk us through what their conversation was like. So what happened during the discussion for each of these groups? What were some of the sticking points and the roadblocks? What did the discussion actually feel like? And then and tell us also a bit about the app, please, because especially for the folks who are tuning into the live stream for the first time, they might not know what this tool is. Then from there, or maybe actually, Yuli, I'm just thinking about this in the moment. Maybe we could have each of the manufacturers take the first minute, and let's do that, and present their own product. So manufacturers, I'm going to ask you to go first for about a minute. So first FIMO, then NeuroNation, then Mind District, then iScan. We'll have one representative of each company just give a very short pitch about what is your product, what does it do. Then we'll hear from the team speaker who will give a summary of what was the conversation like that the group had about developing a creative study design for this product. What were you trying to accomplish? What were the challenges? And then we'll have a few minutes for Q&A, and Julia will be moderating that over Zoom. I think we can make this work. So with that in mind, FIMO, can I have somebody start with a quick summary, please?
Yes, I can go ahead,
Thank
with
you.
the company introduction, right? My name is Alex. I'm one of the co-founders of FIMO Health, and we're developing a digital health application for cancer and MS-related fatigue. So we are using the sensors of a smartphone and a smartwatch to measure relevant vital and environment parameters such as physical activity, stress and sleep behavior, but also temperature, light, noise, and many others. In addition to that, we have coded in our own app where we have digitized different tests and questionnaires that are usually used analogically with pen and paper in clinics and hospitals, these so-called patient-related outcome measures and quality of life measures. And our data helps the patients to better understand their fatigue and how they can cope with it. But the data also helps physicians and doctors to improve their anamnesis process and to design individualized therapy and medication plans.
Wonderful. That was a really terrific and concise summary. So could we get a speaker from the team to share a bit about your discussion and the study design that you came up with?
Hi, I'm Ellie, and I'm representing the team here who discussed this issue. I just want to thank you for helping all the organizers today and my team. And we were an interdisciplinary team, so some of us had more science and study design background, some of us had business or regulatory background, but I think that was helpful because even if all of us didn't have study design background, those people can ask questions and challenge our assumptions or ask questions that we take for granted otherwise. So shout out, thank you to my team. So I guess we spent most of the first session trying to understand the product, understanding what's the value to the patient, what's the value to the clinicians, and also trying to understand the mechanisms by which the designers of this app thought that this was having an effect. So sort of what's the causal pathway to the best of their estimates. So we spent a lot of time understanding the product and asking those questions, and I think that was well spent time. And then in the second session, we got a bit more into the actual study design, and I'll try and share my screen here. Can someone confirm they can see the Miro board?
Yes.
Okay. I think it reflects good brainstorming. It's a bit messy, but we were generating a lot of ideas. So I'm not sure if I can, oh yeah, I can still navigate. So just sort of following study protocol and study design recommendations, we started sort of with the funnel going down, and we talked about the issues, as I talked about the multiple sclerosis focus that we chose and understanding that community. And the hypothesis of our study design was that this app could improve fatigue in this community, and then in the future determining a secondary outcome as well. We ultimately decided on a randomized control trial to generate the high quality evidence that the regulatory environment is looking for right now. We discussed other trial designs other designs like crossover, and thinking those weren't as appropriate. And another point in this design category we talked about was whether this should be a superiority trial or whether the regulatory environment would allow this to be also a non-inferiority trial. So just a distinction is that a superiority trial is that you're demonstrating that your product or intervention is better than the comparator. But a non-inferiority trial is when you're simply demonstrating that it's no worse than the other option. And in drug trials, this is often an existing drug. We weren't 100% sure on the regulatory environment standards, so we went for superiority trial, but there is an existing app in this space that could be a comparator in a non-inferiority trial. As for the comparator, we discussed whether it would just be current standard of care or whether we would also need to include some sort of placebo. And we talked about some considerations for this placebo. So we used the Candy Crush example. So this was proposed. Maybe we could just have patients playing an app like Candy Crush. But then we decided, well, someone might be very engaged with Candy Crush. They might even stay up late playing Candy Crush and have higher levels of fatigue because they're not sleeping. So how, if it was a placebo app, would we try to make it equivalent in terms of at least engagement or time, and it not either increase or reduce fatigue based on the placebo's design? If we're talking about setting, we know this is Germany. We decided it may possibly be able to be remote because we decided to only use patient-reported outcomes and no clinician evaluation. And we also talked about contamination. Does this need to be sort of clustered trial? Would it be by hospital? Patients maybe not sitting in the waiting room saying, oh, I just got this cool app, and sharing their experiences. But that was something that would have to be discussed in more detail. But those are some of the topics. Population, we decided to focus on one disease group because this app in the future may be applied to different indication groups, but we decided that it would be easier to design the trial and focus on the outcomes within the MS, the multiple sclerosis population in this case, and then additional trials could be used to generate evidence. The first outcome of interest to the the entrepreneurs here was fatigue. So we would go with a fatigue patient-reported outcome, and then we discussed other secondary outcomes and what value those secondary outcomes could have for different stakeholders. So, for example, missed days of work, that starts having implications maybe for government and employers as well. And then the intervention is just the app. We talked about whether blinding was possible in this sort of setting and whether you can blind patients to whether they're receiving the placebo app or a non-placebo, the intervention app. Can the clinicians be blinded in digital health studies, for example? And then the last point we got to was the timeline. And based on the challengers, the entrepreneurs' plans for the app, we looked at a 12-week intervention period with follow-up at 18 and 24 weeks. So that was just the summary of a quick study, but again, just to, the takeaways, we thought the interdisciplinary discussion was really helpful, understanding the goals of the entrepreneurs and also the feasibility of generating evidence with different tools and different study designs.
Terrific. Thank you so much, Ellie. That was a wonderful summary. We have time, I think, for one question for the team. Maybe, Ellie, I don't want to put you on the spot to speak on behalf of the whole team, but if there's one question from the group, we can use the hand raise function in Zoom, or I don't know if we have any questions over the live stream coming in. Just give everybody about 10 seconds, see if there's...
So there is a question on Slido.
Yeah, why don't you read it out? That's wonderful.
So I think there's one question about what about using Elevida as a comparator for FEMO? I think that's a short question that you sort of touched upon. And also a question from someone, is there a way to assess fatigue based on, I guess, a different endpoint, which could be decreased activity measured by wearable?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that's also something Alex can discuss together with you, Ellie.
Mm-hmm. Alex, did you want to take it first before I talk?
Yeah, definitely. Probably at least I can go ahead with the question regarding the fatigue based on decreased activity. That's actually one of the paths we are following right now. That's one of the main reasons why we are measuring like all the vital parameters. One of them is physical activity. And that's also what we have seen so far in our first data analytics. Yeah, good question to that.
And in terms of the comparator to the other app, yes, that app's name did come up, and it came up when we were talking about the number of arms in the trial and whether that would be a possible comparator in either a 2-arm trial or a 3-arm trial.
Terrific. Yeah, and I think the number of arms in some of these trials, I think there's actually an opportunity for complexity there, but also some real opportunities for learning about different comparison groups and the efficacy of different tools under different circumstances. So thank you so much. That was a wonderful way to kick us off. NeuroNation, you're up. Let's start with a representative from NeuroNation. I think we have Jakob here, and then we can kick it over to the group.
Thank you very much. Hi, I'm Jacob from NeuroNation. So NeuroNation is a multi-domain personalized cognitive training app focusing on mild and moderate acquired or neurodegenerative cognitive impairments. And the intended use is to alleviate symptoms of these mentioned cognitive impairments. Usually, NeuroNation is used after rehabilitation, after discharge management from neurology from acquired brain injury, or with psychotherapists, with people with mild cognitive impairments, so they do keep up their cognitive capabilities for longer. So right now, NeuroNation is like 10 years old, as a spin-off of the Free University of Berlin, quite long already in the market and produced already a lot of data. But we are always looking into ways how to do it on a larger scale. So we were very happy to participate, and by that, handing over to the group.
Yeah, I guess that will be me. Yeah, we were first discussing within the group what the app was all about and what were the goals and the methods used to actually evaluate a success and a progress. And we found out that a lot of measures are already collected within the app, and that they could be used also to evaluate the app. However, so we were talking a lot about potential endpoints that could be evaluated, both from within the app and then also collected through the smartphone, or from some other, I would say, outside measures. So, for example, through a clinical a clinical professional that is administering a cognitive questionnaire before and after the intervention. And because the app is already used by so many users, I think that Neuronation has come up with a possibility to actually do a blinded controlled study in the way that they give the app to patients which are then not receiving the intervention of the app, but some other videos that they watch, and they think that they are actually getting the training, but they're not really really training. So I think we were in the beginning, we were very much focused on the existing way of evaluating the program, and then we slowly moved away from the very, very closed approach and looked at other endpoints that we could look at, for example, through patient-reported outcomes, through questionnaires, additional questionnaires that could be administered through the app, or also the other activity data that could be collected through, for example, the smartphone. And we discussed which kind of measures were then correlated with cognitive impairment, and found out that the motion range and motion, can I say stability, is apparently correlated with cognitive impairment. So this could be other opportunities to evaluate the app through some measures that are kind of I would say secretly collected through the app. Of course, you would need to collect consent from the patients, and that might reduce the willingness to participate in a trial. But we were discussing these kind of biomarkers, one could say, not biomarkers, but so activities that you could track through the smartphone. And then we were also discussing other possibilities to evaluate the app. I don't know whether it makes sense to share my screen, but I will try to do so. Maybe this one. So here you can see we were a group of people with a lot of background in evaluation, and oops, now I don't know whether I can move this. So we actually we made another category which we called methods, because we talked a lot about study design and what we could do there. And then what would be the opportunities to do so and the challenges. So as I said before, we were talking a lot about endpoints and the possibility to validate actually additional endpoints, which you could then, after the clinical trial, you could use them and collect them routinely through the application, which would make it much more easier to validate or to collect these data and to use them as outcomes also, like in the long run, for example, within a program with health insurances that is based on outcomes or outcomes-based pricing. With regards to the studies design, we actually also discussed a lot of different ways to evaluate the app. So besides this controlled clinical trial, we also discussed whether it would be a possibility to do I think it's called a weighting design, so that the control group is weighting, was randomized to to a group, so that they are waiting for a certain time before they get the same treatment, and that they then they collect outcomes in the meantime. Yeah, so I think that was pretty much it. I don't know whether I forgot anything important here, but yeah. So the big opportunities really lie in the huge group that is already using the app. I remember something like, I don't know, 20 million users which are using the app. So there can be also intergroup comparisons, which one could use, and then the validation of new measures really is an opportunity here.
Wonderful. Sorry, I just want to keep an eye on the time. Gisa, are you?
Yep.
That was
done,
perfect.
yeah.
That was wonderful. Thank you for the detailed summary. That was really good. We again have time for exactly one question. Julia, I don't know if we have anything from Slido, or if anyone on Zoom wants to raise their hand.
So I don't see a hand right now on Zoom, but if you do, go ahead. Otherwise, there's advice from Anne Kielburg, who says, well, maybe look into pharmaceutical clinical trials for pharmaceuticals addressing cognitive impairment for validation. And there's a question about the new endpoints you are addressing. And the person is wondering what were the most promising new endpoints you came up with, or the most interesting, maybe.
If you guys, I'm happy to take this question, and maybe then the team one can add anything else. So what we see is right now, most of the cognitive performance endpoints are coming from in-lab testing with validated standardized assessments like SERAT Plus, like MOCA, and others. And what we see as a huge opportunity is to first, before we start with a bigger trial to prove positive care outcomes, prove that you can do better assessments through maybe more frequent ones, like ecological momentary assessments. Let people use the app, and by that measure all the passive data they generate through device interaction, through a speed of tapping, so inter-tapping variability, which also was part of this digital biomarkers from the library of Time Society, and validate this digital biomarkers first in a trial, and only after that start like a positive care outcome trial and use this validated endpoints for a significantly broader, fully virtual population, and by that be able to prove not only like one ICD-10 code, but to prove that people with cognitive impairments from like 10, 20 different ICD-10 codes might benefit from this intervention. So this was one idea. I mean, definitely budget and time limitations, but might also have like the biggest opportunity at hand. So really passive tracked app, so smartphone activity tracker and cognitive performance tracker inside the app might be the biggest endpoint opportunity.
Terrific. Thank you for sharing that. I think that's really compelling. And I actually, as I was chatting with the different groups, I ended up having conversations with 2 different teams about thinking about the validation of new digital endpoints before actually implementing them sort of large scale in a trial. And of course, that's part of the process that we all get to pioneer in using new tools and new endpoints in exciting clinical studies. So thank you so much. We are over to Mind District. So we'll start with a quick summary of what is Mind District, and then we'll hear from the team.
Yes, thanks a lot, Ariel, for the introduction, and thanks, Julia, for inviting us. Mind District offers online interventions for patients with mental illnesses that are based on evidence-based treatments like cognitive behavioral therapy. And with the DIGA for today's challenge, we try to bridge the gap of the waiting period to psychotherapy for patients with depression. So right now, patients have relatively quick access to a so-called psychotherapeutic consultation. So very short sessions with a therapist. So within 4 weeks, they can get this consultation, but then they have around 20 weeks waiting time before the actual therapy starts. And with Mind District, we try to bridge this gap and support patients in this time with psychoeducation about their condition and with very practical hands-on exercises to help them deal with difficulties they are experiencing. And in addition to that, our intervention also includes a diary for patients to track their mood. And the therapist that did the consultation can have a look at this diary and also track the progress of the patient in the online intervention and give feedback to the progress. And I think I can give the word to Horia from the team.
Yes, I'm trying to share the screen now. Doesn't really work. Yes, so the goal of Mind District is, like it was said, to bridge the waiting period for the psychotherapy consultation and to stabilize patients and improve their knowledge on their conditions. So for the proposed study design, we we would like to make the recruitment during the psychotherapy consultation.
Horia, just a quick interruption.
Yes.
Were you trying to screen share?
Yes, but somehow that doesn't work.
Perhaps one of your other team members is able to do so, just so that we can see your whiteboard.
Yeah, that would be great.
Could one of the team members who can see the whiteboard perhaps do a screen share? If not, we can probably do it on the HIH side of things, just to make sure that everyone can visualize your summary.
So should I stop my share or?
Yeah, why don't you stop your share?
Actually, no. It wasn't even started yet.
It wouldn't be a proper virtual conference if we didn't have some tech problems.
So guys, from my team, can you share the screen, please?
So, I'm having trouble sharing as well, so I'm trying, but it's not working. I don't know if anybody else is still there.
Maybe you can post. Maybe you can post the link in the chat, and I can try sharing. There's a link, and I'll do.
It also didn't work for me.
So it does. It looks good for me. And I'll share the screen. And I see you moving around. And this looks, can you see my screen? So you just tell me how to move around. Horia.
Yes, we're good, yes. So for, in regards of the control group, we would like to partner with the health insurance for getting relevant data. The only problem with this would be the time lag that we would have if we would get the data from the health insurance. So it would be a process till the health insurance gets the consent of the patient, sends the form, gets the data, and the data gets back to us. An alternative to this would be to recruit the control group via consultation as well. So we could have, for example, two psychotherapists, and one would use the app for the study design, and the other one would be the control group that would not use it. We had a lot of discussion regarding the endpoints which should be used. And think that the health literacy as a subscale of the quality of life would be a good endpoint, the access to care, and here specifically the comparisons of dropout during waiting time, and general quality of life standards questionnaire. And not least, the VHO5 integral part of DIGA assessed as diary. So this would be another endpoint that we can use in the forms. As a design, like I said, it would be a parallel group design. So we would compare two groups to another, and it would be characteristic in a high number of real-world data compared to random controllized trial data. So we would have much more data. And we identified also opportunities and challenges. One of the opportunities would be to get richer data, and that in collaboration with the health insurances. And we could use the data in a secure way. And another very big opportunity would be the possibility to transfer the design, so the study design, to other modules. So the eHealth software has not one module, but many others. And the design could then be transferred to the other modules. And as for challenges, the collaboration with eHealth, so with health insurances, can be tricky under circumstances. There are no standardized instruments for health literacy, patients' autonomy, dealing with illness-related difficulties, unsure whether a self-created instrument, non-standardized, non-validated instruments would be acceptable to the BAMF. So this would have to be checked with them and clear with them. And the time lag in claims data and information research in the health insurance would be another problem, and the clear claim for the product. So this would be also a challenge. So this is the data that we came with during our team meeting.
Wonderful. Thank you for the summary. I think again we have time for at least one question. Any questions from our Zoom participants, or perhaps from the live audience from the internet?
So I can kick off with a question from the internet. So the internet is asking anonymously, could the instruments that have been validated be used in a digital setting? And there's also the question, would this need to be compared to existing DIGAs in this indication? I guess for the DIGA application, not necessarily, but could be an option. But maybe you have an opinion on that as well. And the last question, because I think it's interesting as well, could this be done completely remote as well?
Completely remote?
Remote, yes. As a remote study design, but maybe Stella, yes, go ahead.
Answer this as well. Of course, we can use the questionnaires online as well. As we said, we have some questionnaires already implemented as a diary. So we have that as a routine measurement. Comparison to other DIGAs, of course, always interesting. I don't know if there are DIGAs that have a blended approach during a waiting time yet. But if there are, that would be very interesting to compare. And to do it completely remote, yes and no. Of course, we would like that because it makes things easier. But things like informed consent is usually a thing that has to happen in person. And fortunately, because there are these psychotherapeutic consultations happening, and they are happening in person, we could use that for our recruitment and for informed consent.
And then there's a hint on Slido as well about the European Health Literacy Project. Apparently, they came up with the EU HL Q47, which is a questionnaire that's fully validated also in Germany. That's maybe something interesting to look into. Anyone else has a question from Zoom or the internet? Not at this point. Let me reload.
Well, I think that was terrific. I guess let's actually take it home then with our last but not least challenge of the day. Could I have someone from iScan tell us a bit about your product, and then we'll head over to the team.
Yeah, hi there. I'm Klaus from the iScan team, and iScan is an innovative smartphone app that's designed to measure your visual acuity as a surrogate for the quality of your eyesight. And it does so by using all the modern smartphone sensors, augmented reality, and so forth. And by that, we achieve a very quick and valid measurement that's comparable in its quality to what we usually perform at the eye doctor's office. And why would you want to do that? Well, there's more than 2 million Germans affected by chronic eye diseases, and they need frequent therapy, and the therapy frequency is pretty much determined only by the visual acuity. And so right now they have to go to the eye doctor's office every 4 weeks or so. And that is a huge treatment burden. And at the same time, we have these huge gaps of 4 weeks where we don't have any visual acuity data measurement. And so we think by allowing the patient to do home monitoring, we can really improve the therapy and the quality of his life. But yeah, how to do so exactly with a clinical study was sort of a big question. And fortunately, we had the guys from the Researchathon to do the maths for us. So I would like to hand it over to our team and to Sven.
Hey there. So can you understand me? Perfect, wonderful. So yeah, actually, also for us, and I'm speaking for the research team consisting of researchers and other doctors, I think it was very interesting to have this diverse group of people and working together on some sort of new idea for us, because we didn't know the project beforehand. And first of all, understanding how the product works, how the mechanisms of the product operate was really interesting. And then baking that all together in a sort of study prototype was the challenge, and I enjoyed that very much. So let me just share my screen to you so everyone can see it. I think that should be good. So just to give you an overview, we designed this board. This was sort of the brainstorming process under the hood, but I'm not gonna annoy you with that. So I'm just gonna start right away. And we used some sort of basic brainstorming slide to get an idea of positive care effects we can deliver to patients. So we identified some patient pain points that patients with these kind of eye problems actually have, which is the resource intake of a doctor's visit. It takes up money, time, etc. There is a therapy where you inject some, let's say, stuff into the eyes. They are painful, they are expensive. So we got to the conclusion that eye scan actually is doing a reduction of therapy-related efforts and strains. So our goal was then at that point to search for some endpoints, helping us actually measuring this reduction of therapy-related efforts and strains. So that's where the discussion basically got a little bit challenging, because we were trying to figure out, okay, which endpoints do we actually need to measure to show some patient benefits, and the discussion went on with some MDR regulatory certification endpoints. So basically we assumed that the device or the app is MDR certified and already the measurement is accurate. And based on these preconditions, we identified these endpoints, which consist of basically patient-reported outcomes, patient satisfaction, where we want to calculate a score for that via a questionnaire, and there's a visual function questionnaire, which is an indicator for the quality of life. And collect these questionnaire patient-reported outcomes in the app itself. And then we have some basically clinical function tests, as basic as the number of doctor visits per year, the ratio of injection or intervention visits per all visits, and then the eyesight, which is basically being measured with a visual acuity testing and an OCT, optical coherence tomography testing. And we want to collect these data points from the EHR, the electronic health record. Scrambling all these things together in a study design was actually kind of simple. We went for a prospective cohort study design of 6 months, where we have the intervention group, which uses the flexible sort of eye scan app treatment plan, and where you have the control group, which basically follows the classic fixed treatment plan, where you have 1 visit a month, and basically went on with the study plan. So you have some sort of baseline assessment where you do the questionnaire, the OCT, and the clinical acuity testing. The control group gets that every month, just like the standard scheme. And we have the flexible scheme with the app going on over 6 months. And after that, we have the assessment, the final assessment again, comparing the 2 groups. To, at the end, give us an indication if eye scan as an intervention, as a service, provides a better quality of your vision, so better OCT results, better visual acuity, and as secondary endpoints, more patient satisfaction, less doctor visits, and a better injection per visit ratio, resulting in a better treatment for the patient. So yeah, that should be it. And thank you for enabling this opportunity, because it was really fun to do. So thank you at Health Innovation Hub for that.
Yeah, thank you, Sven, for that wonderful summary. That was a great way to take us home. We do have a little bit of time for a couple of questions, comments, anything else. So please feel free to raise a hand or just chime in on Zoom.
So there's one question on Slido again. And there's the question if there are other apps assessing vision acuity. So if this is already a concept that I assume might be behind the question that has already been evaluated, are you maybe aware of that?
I probably can take it from there. Not really. There's a few apps that go in that broad direction, I would say, but they are not nearly as precise as we are because they are not using all the modern smartphone sensors. And so I do not think that they reach validity anywhere near to the level that we do. And so there's no one that I would have heard of who's like planning, in all honesty, to use it for home monitoring. It's more like a playground. So I think we're first of a kind.
Wonderful. That's great. Anything else from the group? Otherwise, I might actually put my colleague who's just in the other room, Julia Hagen. Can I cold call you for a question? This is so for me as.
I also have a question on Slido.
You have a question on Slido. Oh, okay. Well, I wanted to ask you a question in conclusion for today, but why don't you ask the team a question first? Sorry about that.
Because I think it's a relevant question from Anna. How do you ensure you avoid selection bias if you do not randomize? Maybe the team can clarify.
I think that might be better suited for Klaus actually, because he's in the hospital, and I think the patient selection would be addressed in the hospital. I think basically you could just randomize for the patients with these illnesses. They would come to the hospitals, and you would offer them the program. So maybe at that point you could do the randomization. But maybe from the clinical perspective, Klaus, you could add to that.
Thank you.
Yeah, actually, I would set it up as an RCT, so as a randomized trial. So we include the patient, and then it's randomized in which group he falls. Otherwise, you do not get valid data.
So the idea would be to randomize among people who have a willingness to use the tool, then?
Yeah, exactly.
Got it. We actually just had a question come in on, I can see the Zoom chat from Ellie, whom we heard from earlier, who asked maybe a question/comment, would historical controls be comparable enough in this case? Could save on study costs? Maybe we could get a quick reflection from the team on that. She said, oh, so as an addition, she said only for the non-patient reported outcomes, just hospital data, etc. Do you have any thoughts on?
Probably also it wouldn't be valid data because like if you use real life data, there's not enough data quality so you can compare it. And I mean, you could try to go to any study data, but I think still, like if you want to get any acceptance for the results of our study, then we need the control group, even though it's a hassle.
Sounds good. Thank you so much. So just to conclude, I wanted to, as I was trying to do earlier, I wanted to put my colleague Julia on the spot a bit because she and I have been working together over the last 2 days. Many of you were part of the Evidence Con yesterday. You saw both of us up here sort of comfortably 2 meters away from each other. Now we're in different rooms. But Julia, this is not your first Researchathon with the Health Innovation Hub. It's mine, however. And so I was just curious, as you look at this group and as you participated in a number of conversations today, what were your impressions? What surprised you? What impressed you? How far have we come in the last year in thinking through some of these topics as groups of researchers and scientists and innovators? Maybe just some quick reflections to wrap up the day.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. So I think it was in comparison, we did the first Researchathon in Heidelberg in February 2020, when we were still able to do big conferences with many people in one room, which was great. And it was the first time because we never had done something like that, and we never had heard of people doing this, because usually you do other things in hackathon like formats. And it was very interesting, but we had at that time people worked on fake cases, and it turned out that this is not great because it left many relevant questions open. So I think from what I saw in the discussions, it was great that we were able to discuss on real cases, ask all the questions we need to ask to really understand the solutions and how they are aiming to improve patients' lives. So I think this was great, and I think in general there were some very great ideas, and I think it will be very interesting to keep up these formats and to push creativity and integration of digital elements and different data sources to even further level. But I think that's a long way to go, definitely, because we will need a lot of validation in between. But that will be very interesting.
Thank you. Wonderful. And that's perhaps a good segue into, I'm just going to conclude with a couple of slides. We can bring up just the 2 slides that I have loaded up to share. Thank you so much. So in the spirit of ongoing collaboration, first for folks who are native German speakers or understand some German, you don't have to be a native speaker, of course. We have one last day of the Digital Medicine Week tomorrow. Tomorrow's events will be taking place in German. I want to thank all of the international members of our community for joining us yesterday and today for the English language events. There will be more of this to come over the course of the year, so if you had fun, stay tuned. Speaking of staying tuned, I wanted to remind everybody to please stay in touch. We have the Digital Medicine Community Group set up on LinkedIn, and if you haven't yet, you can join us by scanning this handy QR code in front of your computer right now. Or you can just look for Digital Medicine Community. I'll leave this up. Please do stay in touch. Before we finish up for the day, I want to say a round of very, very heartfelt thank yous. The first is to our partner for all of these events, the Digital Medicine Society, who helped us think through an effective program and how we could really deliver an international curriculum and international examples to the group. We would encourage you to follow the Digital Medicine Society. They have a wonderful newsletter. We have a wonderful newsletter. If you're not subscribed to the HIH and the Digital Medicine Society newsletters, that's your homework if you want to keep up with what's going on in digital health and digital medicine on both sides of the Atlantic. I want to thank the HIH team. What you don't see for those participating from home is a number of really talented folks behind the screen, behind the scenes, making sure that we're all safely distanced from one another, but still bringing you video and Zoom rooms that work and everything else. So thank you to the entire production team. Thank you, Natalia, for making this all work so well. And then finally, I want to thank our challenge sponsors and our mentors. You have all been so generous with your time. For the mentors, these are digital health experts who took time out of their day to work with teams and chat with teams, and they do it because they love speaking with digital health innovators. So thank you, mentors. And then for the sponsors, thank you as well for sharing your ideas and your products and really your babies with us. We know you've been very generous with your time, and we hope you've also taken away some really useful thoughts from today, and we hope that you all stay in touch. So with that, I will say goodbye and thank you from Berlin. It's been wonderful to see everyone, and we look forward to seeing you virtually soon and hopefully in person sooner than later. Be well, be healthy, and thank you. Ciao, ciao.